Celtics Mavericks.
Celtics are the balls.
Well, look, Celtics are up 3-0, so I don't know if they sweep him, though. I could see Luka having a big night because everybody's all piling on him now.
Everyone's just bagging on him.
So,
I love tonight that the ESPN headline was the biggest game of Luka's career. I'm like, oh, for God's sakes.
well, I do think,
You stop the hyperbole.
yeah, that is hyperbolic. But
Yeah.
I do think it is a big game for him in a sense that, he has always shown that when he gets criticized or when he's in the narrative,
He'll
the national narrative, and he's getting panned, he wakes up.
Yeah.
There's like this pissed off Luka
Mm-hmm.
that seems to exist, so maybe we'll get that tonight. But otherwise, look, the series is over.
Yes.
Celtics are going to win the title. And the man that I was wanting to at least briefly talk about that just never gets discussed that I think is an amazing story is Brad Stevens.
Yeah. Because we were talking about Hurley making the transition and how not many people have been successful. Not only was Brad Stevens a successful coach, but he has now given way and is kind of the architect of this whole thing and just has quietly sat up there and built. Like I don't think there's any more dynasties in basketball. It's just not set up that way. It's hard to keep teams together, and this Boston team, some of the pieces are going to get broken up. But dude, he has put something together here that has been very good for a while, and seemingly on paper going forward is going to be a force to be reckoned with. And he doesn't get a lot of credit for it.
No, he doesn't get talked about a lot, maybe because he's quiet, but also he wasn't the one who brought in Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown.
Yeah, he was the coach.
So, you could say, well, the question I was going to ask is how many college basketball coaches could just roll into the NBA and build a title team?
Not
many. I think that's being underlooked.
Yeah.
Is that a word? Underlooked? Overlooked. I think that's being undervalued.
Side looked. Yeah, whatever look you want.
Yeah, I think that's being undervalued what Brad Stevens has done. Now, you could say, because he made the Kristaps deal.
Mm-hmm.
He brought in Drew Holiday.
Yeah.
And he made the trade for White.
Mm-hmm.
And I was reading a Wall Street Journal article that was talking. Did I just say Wall Street Journal?
Hey, you know what? When I look under something and then I find the journal there, I like to read it.
God. The Wall Street Journal did a piece on the smartest move that the Celtics made was not trading Jaylen Brown.
Yeah.
Because remember, Jaylen Brown was a little unhappy, and it was like, maybe we should break him up.
And people were saying, do you really want to give Jaylen Brown this big contract? Because, there was a whole narrative that these two could not exist together, that it just wasn't going to work, and they held fast.
He did not trade Jaylen Brown.
Nope.
And so you could say, if I gave Joe Cronin Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, perhaps he's capable of building a title team. That's fair to say. You got your two stars there, build around that. But I remember Kevin Pritchard being in here when we were back in the day. We were interviewing him about all the Greg Oden draft noise and all that.
Mm-hmm.
Remember what he said about building a championship team? He said, we've got the cake, we've got the pillars, but the icing is actually the hardest part.
Sure. Well,
putting the pieces around the pillars.
Well, and this is what's going to happen with Dallas. I mean, Dallas has their Kyrie and they have their Luka, but when you look at this, it's not enough. And by the way, it wasn't enough in Boston. We forget, because now Boston's going to get crowned, and people are talking about Boston as this all-time team, and they're only the fourth team since the turn of the century here to win 80 games over the course of the playoffs, and they're only and the regular season they're only going to lose 2 playoff games basically, and they're in this rarefied air. But God, 4 weeks ago we were talking about Boston, Boston hasn't proven anything. So give him some credit for, like you said, finding the icing that goes with this cake to get Boston over the top. And by the way, including finding a head coach, losing that head coach because he was stooping executives, and then putting in Mazzulla, who, while is a psychopath and weird, apparently presses all the right buttons.
Yeah, it's all about fit. And, it's interesting with Kristaps, he didn't fit in Dallas, but he fits in Boston, and Brad Stevens should be given credit for finding guys that fit and work together. I mean, this team plays so well together. It is so unselfish. It is really good team basketball, and it's really refreshing. The whole dynasty thing, I think it's weird I think we think this about every team that wins a title anywhere. We're like, oh, how many are they going to win? Because we just saw them win one. It's like recency bias. Like, oh, they can't be stopped. Well, Boston, if there's any team that maybe I would bet wouldn't be a dynasty, it'd probably be this one. I mean, it doesn't have a superstar player.
No, but
it's like, I mean, your comp, we were talking about this yesterday, your comp for them was the Pistons of Rip Hamilton and Rasheed Wallace and Chauncey Billups fame.
That won one.
They won one title. I mean, that was a great run that they had. And this is a great run for Boston. I'm not taking anything away from them, but they've played a 8 seed, a 6 seed, a 4 seed, and a 5 seed.
Mm-hmm.
So let's pump the brakes on this being a dynasty. I think it's an amazing story, but I don't know if they get more than one. I don't know if they ever have an MVP. But it's just a great. Brad Stevens deserves a lot of credit. It's an interesting story. He comes straight off the college basketball court to be a coach and then jumps into the front office and wins a title.
Mm-hmm.
That's got to piss you off as a Blazer fan that it came so easy.
Well, and remember, too, that the moves to acquire some of these pieces, you did have to move out a defensive player of the year in Marcus Smart. You moved off a six-man of the year in Brogdon. Like, bringing in Drew Holiday and making moves for that, those were not just, fly by night, no big deal. I mean, you chose to keep the right guys and you had to go sacrifice some stuff to bring in key other pieces. So give them a lot of credit. And you're right. Who knows what happens here going forward, but they did win 64 games. They have breezed through these playoffs. But the NBA, and this is what I was saying earlier, it's not set up right now for dynasties. It is hard. Someone is going to pay, like with the new salary cap, it's hard to keep guys. And people are going to pay for the Derek Whites of the world. And you're going to have to find younger, cheaper guys to go in and fill in those roles. It's hard to keep 3 or 4 big name players. And so it'll be interesting to see. We haven't had, this is either the 6th or 7th straight year where we have a different NBA champion. In the league. So it just, we haven't, a lot of people think the days of the super team and the dynasties are done. And so now, like, if you win 2 in this version of the NBA, a lot of people think that's kind of like, if you find a way to get 2, you've really done something special.
Well, it is pretty deep. I mean, if you look around the league, if the Sixers can stay healthy, but then you still have Denver in there, Oklahoma City, Minnesota on the come up, the Knicks and all these teams that, it does seem very deep. It used to be that the NBA was just top heavy with 2 or 3 teams, and that was about anymore. It doesn't seem like that.
No, Dallas is going to be back.
Yeah, Dallas.
I would assume that Luka is going to come back in the best shape of his life. They're going to continue to tweak this roster. Dallas, he's 25. We also forget that Tatum and Brown took their lumps. Jordan took his lumps, coming up. Kobe and Shaq took their lumps. A lot of people, you have to get there, get your knocked in the dirt, and you rebound. And for all this talk of Luka can't win one, that guy has won at every level that he's ever been at. He's 20, just turned 25. I don't think Jordan won a title, I think, until he was 27. So let's give Luka an opportunity here. Like the headline and today on ESPN was like, Luka fails to grasp what made, Michael and LeBron and this Celtics team great. I'm like, oh my God, he's just turned 25.
Weird? I know this is going to sound crazy, sports talk, hot takey.
Yeah.
If you were to ask me which team is more likely to become a dynasty, I would take Dallas over Boston.
Really?
Yeah, because you have to have superstars.
Yeah.
And Boston doesn't really. I mean, you could argue that Brown and Tatum are superstars, but they're not. I mean, you're never going to have an MVP on that team.
Yeah.
Right?
I wouldn't think.
I feel like dynasty comes when you have not only a team that plays like Boston, unselfish, well-coached, shares the ball, plays on both ends, and has pieces that fit together well, right?
Yeah.
But you also, within that, have superstar generational players. Spurs had Tim Duncan. The Warriors had Steph. Lakers, Kobe, Shaq. Boston doesn't have that. Dallas does. Yeah. I mean, Luka's that guy. Now, I'm not saying they're going to rattle off multiple championships. I just think they'd be more likely to than Boston if Dallas ever finds just the exact right pieces around. I mean, they're in the finals, and I know we're all crapping on them now because they're getting swept, but they're not going away. No, and Kyrie's awesome, and so they've got some tweaks to make, and once they do, they could be the next Boston.
Yeah,
but with a superstar.
The best. I saw someone today point out, like, if you're Philadelphia, like, you're sitting around, you basically handed the Celtics every one of their key players. Like you had the ability, if you're the Philadelphia 76ers, to have, well, you did have Holiday and you dealt him and he ended up in Boston. And then you chose Ben Simmons and Markelle Fultz over Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. Yeah.
Is that Daryl Morey?
Yeah. So, hey, that process.
The process.
The process.
The Celtics are the ball.
Philadelphia handed those three guys to the Boston Celtics. Whoops.